Blessings and welcome to today's Law Enforcement Daily Devotional. Today we're in John chapters 9 and 10, and there is a flow, just like there has been this whole time. But I want to make a point today that a lot of times our chapter breaks seem to get in the way of this thread that Jesus is speaking of. It's Jesus has this speech going, and instead of just listening to the whole sermon basically, or the whole train of thought that Jesus is having, we get like the first half of it and then there's a chapter break and we stop and we don't get the whole train of thought. And today is exactly the same way. And not just chapter breaks, but when the Bible has these titles in certain sections, Jesus heals the man blind from birth, which we're going to read today. And then it moves into Jesus, the Good Shepherd. A lot of times, yes, it's nice to have these reminders of which stories are taking place, but sometimes it breaks up this train of thought. Jesus didn't just stop at one and start another. Sometimes it's all part of the big picture that he's taking this teachable moment and he's using different examples trying to make his point to us. And today was, like I said, just like that. Um, so when you read, don't always think when you come to a new title, um, the 10 virgins. Don't just think, oh, well, he stopped and then this is the next day and they don't have anything to do with each other. And sometimes you just need to forget about that title and just read it as a continuation, like you would a book. If you pick up a book, it may have chapters in it, um, but in that chapter, it doesn't have other chapters broken down in other sections, and it doesn't always have, every sentence has a verse to it. That is very important because that's how we memorize and look at the Bible. But when you sit down and read and you're looking at Jesus's teachings, listen to everything Jesus has to say, and don't mentally take a break here because there's a page break, or take a break here because there's a title change, or a chapter change. Read the whole thing. A lot of times you'll get more out of it that way. So starting in chapter 9 verse 1, Jesus saw the unseen. I love the thought of this. If you've got homeless people in your jurisdiction, or wherever you work, sometimes you see them every day and it gets to where you just drive by and you don't even notice they're there because they're just like a fixture. You don't always see the same building every day. You don't stop and take an opportunity to look at the building. You know it's there and you just drive by it every day. Sometimes people become that insignificant to us and we don't notice them. Jesus notices. He sees the unseen man who has no sight. There's just a lot there to unpack. Um, but it's also interesting because the disciples knew this man. It doesn't even say anybody's spoken to him yet, but the disciples already knew the guy's story and said, oh yeah, he didn't just go blind last year or last month. He's been blind from birth. He was born without eyesight. He was born actually without any eyes in the socket. That's what it's talking about here. He has no eyeballs. 9:3, um, they ask, did this guy sin or did his parents sin? And Jesus says something that is so awesome that I've missed in years past. Jesus says, no, this man is special. He was made for a moment where God will be glorified through him. And his moment is about to arrive. It's beautiful that this person that everybody has thought is insignificant for years, God says, no, he's special. I personally created him for this moment, and I poured out I knitted him in his mother's womb for this moment. God knows this man, and he's been waiting for this moment to reveal himself to the world and glory. 9:4, this verse, in light of the man who they're talking about, has lived his whole life in physical darkness. and he's about to get his eyes opened to the light. But Jesus also says, spiritually, even though he's going from darkness to light, he's telling the disciples, he's making this teachable moment, this point of saying, you're about to go from the light of having me in the world into spiritual darkness, where you're going to be persecuted. And he contrasts the two. In verse 5, he says, while I am in the world, I am the light of the world. In verse 6, Jesus spits on the ground, makes some mud out of dust. I believe with my whole heart, he actually made eyeballs. He put them on this guy. It reminds me of Genesis 2:7. He says, then the Lord God formed a man from the dust of the ground and breathed into his nostrils the breath of life. And the man became a living being. That same creative force that created Adam, I think Jesus took and used dust and created eyeballs. But just like a human being, Adam sinned, and so all man is born with Adam's sin. We're created from dust, but we're born with that sin. This man's eyeballs, created by Christ, put in a human being who's got sin. How do we get free from sin? We get baptized by living water, who is Jesus Christ. So Jesus says, get up and go. Jesus doesn't lead him by the arm. He doesn't take him. He tells him, go. I know you know how to get there because you've done it all your life. Go and wash your eyes. Baptize your eyes. The man later says Jesus anointed his eyes. But it's not until the guy washes his eyes, he gets baptized with living water, all of a sudden he sees. And this creates this controversy between the Pharisees and him and his family about the eyesight and how the eyes were created. And Jesus again uses this teachable moment to say, he now has eyes and can see, but you Pharisees are blind. And the Pharisees are like, we're not blind. What are you talking about? And Jesus, the wonderful teaching, and it goes into to the end of 9, and then we'll jump into 10. He says, yeah, you're blind. You have eyes, but do not see. You are the blind because you're missing spiritual things. You're not seeing spiritually. And then Jesus says, well, first off, do you remember Ezekiel 12:2? He says they have eyes but do not see, and they have ears but do not hear. So Jesus has addressed the eyes but do not see. And then don't miss it, because he goes into 10 and he completes this by saying you have eyes but do not see, but you also have ears but do not hear. And the way he conveys this to him is he says, I'm the shepherd. I'm the good shepherd. I'm the gate, and you can't come into the gate pen unless you go through me. It's just like he'll say later in 14:6, Jesus says, I'm the way, the truth, and the life. No one comes to the Father except through me. So then he gets to the part where you have eyes but don't see, but you have ears and do not hear, because Jesus says, my sheep hear my voice and they follow me. You don't hear my voice. You have ears but do not hear. You don't hear the truth. It's just such a beautiful 9 and 10 just flow. I wish we could take all the titles and the chapter breaks and just put this whole story together so we could recognize that it's, you have eyes but don't see and ears but don't hear, and that's what Jesus is teaching them. Ironically, in chapter 10 verse 6, the Pharisees, they don't understand what he's saying, and they don't get it. And it's Jesus is like, this is what I'm telling you. Yeah, you hear me and don't get it. And then 9:10, he says, I'm the door. If anyone enters through me, he will be saved. And I will go in and out and find pasture. That's just the same thing. You got to go through Jesus Christ, the gate. He's the only way to get to the Father. All right, I've gone over, but it's a wonderful story. If you didn't read it, go back and read it. It's so cool. Tomorrow we're in Luke chapter 13 through 15, and the specifics will be on the next page. In the meantime, you guys be safe.